Okay, I'm going to jump in. I've been looking forward to this all week. This is the last time I'm going to do this, but specifically, this is the third bizarre and spooky cases of pale crawler humanoids in residential areas from Mysterious Universe. This is our third episode where we're just reading something from Mysterious Universe, but listen, they do great work and we need to synthesize this information and get it out there, you guys. Most importantly, this is by Brent Swanser, by the way. This was put together July 25th, 2021.
I'm crawling.
It's about 20 days ago, less than 3 episodes ago. So since we started, really, they've released another compilation of pale crawler sightings and encounters. And, does that mean that they're crawling more? I don't know.
I'm going to say statistically, yes.
I mean, let's hope so. Or hope not. I don't know.
It depends. Yes.
I'm so confused. Okay. A very bizarre report from the site Phantoms and Monsters comes to us from the historic French Quarter of New Orleans, Louisiana, also known as the
Grunch.
Home of the Grunch.
Grunch you.
Oh my God, are these grunches?
I fucking hope not.
Oof.
That's a terrifying.
The Grunch and the Wendigos have interbred, and now we have the pale crawlers.
This neighborhood is known as the Vieux Carré, from where this sighting comes from. It's the oldest neighborhood in the city, full of historic buildings from the 18th and early 19th centuries, and known for its quaint streets and magnificent architecture. Soon to be known for its horrifying ghouls. It typically would not be the sort of place one would expect to encounter a tall, pale humanoid monster. But this is exactly what allegedly happened. This is the story. I noticed it became eerily quiet. Not something that happens there, especially as people stumble to their houses. He, parentheses, the boyfriend, also noticed something because he gripped my hand hard and picked up pace. He had a strange look to his face as I struggled to keep up. He was taking odd routes. Finally, I caught what was making him act bizarre. I followed a split-second glance of his to a building. The best I could say, it looked like a dingy, pale, quote-unquote, Spider-Man going up the side of the building. I remember him harshly whispering not to look, to just keep moving. He was taking us to Bourbon Street, where we would hopefully be more people, but this was off-season and midweek, so there were less people and even less than I would have expected. Time seemed to stand eerily
New
still.
Orleans takes days off.
Time seems to stand eerily still. The city that famously takes a break every now and then. I looked about 2 blocks later and it was on the roof, clearly tracking something I prayed was not us. The silence was truly deafening as my adrenaline was going, and I think I tuned out more sounds trying to escape being prey. This thin humanoid, which was defying gravity, freaked us out bad. We made it to the hotel with my last memory of a glide being just before the house where the supposed vampire brothers lived and disappeared.
Hold on.
Okay, yep. This is a layered onion of paranormal.
Yeah. I think it was the most harrowing experience I've ever had in my life, and there's been a few close calls in my life. I know it's a quirky city.
The vampire brothers and all.
The quirks. Yeah. But this was like we were in another dimension. That was the French Quarter. Send it something that is well written, everyone. Good writing, everyone. This felt like we were in another dimension. To this day, still frightening.
Did they mean to say in the Sendak French Quarter?
I don't know.
I don't know anymore.
There was little bears everywhere. We were completely sober and just out for a romantic stroll in a city we had a connection with. That thing, Shudder. I can't escape it, even over time. Poorly written, but terrifying nonetheless.
Yeah, terrifying nonetheless. Goosebumps all over my body.
Mm-hmm. Especially in New Orleans, which has such a rich history of folklore and just weird shit. And vibes. home of American voodoo. It's probably one of the most magical places in this country. Also, those fucking po' boys. Whew, I went into this I went into a gas
Very good.
station one time and
Sure.
was like, "Can I have a shrimp po' boy?" And they were like, "Yep, just made some." And it was the size of my head and cost $4. It was so good. Anyway, next up.
The last place in America that you can afford rent.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, our next case takes us to Eastern Kentucky, where a group of teenage witnesses saw something very strange in the yard of one of their residences.
All right,
They'd spent the
second
day.
to last place in America you can afford.
They had spent the day dirt biking nearby. We had decided to go to sleep on the trampoline, but at around 10 p.m., Jeff and I spotted some coyotes at a tree line across the road from us. We all went inside because I freaked out because I'm from a city and don't like wild animals. Also, it stunk really bad. It smelled like
Nice.
dead rabbit or deer. So we all go inside. After about an hour inside, Sam tells us we forgot the bedding on the trampoline, and he wanted me and Jeff to go get it. I, being terrified of the dark, begged Jeff to come with me. Well, he just said, whatever. He agrees, and we head back to the door onto the patio/porch. We go down the stairs and towards the trampoline. I am behind Jeff, grabbing the back of his shirt, and he has a flashlight pointing straight. I'm looking to the right towards past the road, looking for coyotes, but I hear a thud sound to our left. I look over, and there's a line of 4 trees parallel with us. They are shaped in a V starting at the base. I don't see anything, but I tell Jeff to point the flashlight over there, and we don't see anything. So he swings it straight and keeps walking. I hear the thud, but this time Jeff also hears it. It is much louder and still to our left. Jeff swings the flashlight in between the second and third tree in the row, and it's walking straight with us, not at us, but towards the same direction we were going. It's like kind of mimicking their movement, parallel. As soon as the flashlight lands on it, it's behind the third tree now, and it stands up in the middle of the V of the tree. It stood about 4 or 5 heads taller than me, and I'm 5'9". It was incredibly skinny, as in I could see its ribs through its skin, which was bright white. When the flashlight hit it, it definitely had a glow. Its eyes were the scariest part. 2 big reflective orbs that were dark gray/blackish. They were reflective in a sense, like the eyes illuminated the flashlight back at us. Also, its hands were gigantic. The fingers wrapped around the tree trunks and were super long. Jeff looks over and I scream. He dropped the flashlight and we run. I still have his shirt in my hand and I yank him hard and he just takes off in front of me. I sprint past him and up the back porch stairs. He falls on the stairs. I run to the door and open it, waiting for him. As soon as he runs through, I slam it shut and lock the deadbolt. I shut the curtains and jump back onto the couch. Sam and Bob had heard me screaming my fucking lungs out, and they were making their way outside. Jeff is standing on the couch and he starts babbling, and I tell them what he saw, and I started hyperventilating. I have anxiety and asthma. Yeah, we know.
We all would. That's a good natural state to have.
We know you were afraid to sleep on the trampoline. I was you. I haven't had an attack in years, and I stopped carrying my emergency inhaler a long time ago. Sam is bewildered, and I started crying while I was having my fit. I cried for almost an hour and didn't fall asleep until almost 3 a.m. I woke up and packed. It's the end of the story.
Well, that one I didn't enjoy.
That
That one shook me.
Yeah.
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 The way that they described the trees in the V
Yeah.
kind of reminds me of we did was it a news, I think, maybe, of people that had looked through.
Oh, yeah. Oh, wow.
and
That's
then,
true.
like,
I think about that a
saw-
lot.
Yeah, saw another dimension.
Yeah, they looked. These people were. They found these trees, and when they looked through a specific tree made a V coming out of the ground, and when they looked through the V in the tree, it was like another forest beyond that.
How
Yeah,
weird.
I mean, maybe the crawlers are interdimensional beings that are
Maybe they're coming out of there.
leaving their portals around.
It's a good point.
Just leaving their portals around for any willy-nilly material creature to come across.
Yeah, but at least they
exactly.
mostly seem to be outside of your house, except when they're not.
Except when they're not.
This witness says that when he was 10 years old, his parents had taken him with them to go house hunting with a realtor he calls M in El Paso, Texas, like the letter M, where his father was stationed at a base. One house they were taken to was in pretty dire shape. Described as overgrown with bushes and ugly crabgrass, the sidewalk is uneven and jagged, and even missing in some places. The inside of it was no better, depressing and decrepit, smelling like something old and wet, yet fresh and rotting at the same time. They looked around the disgusting living room, then headed to the garage, which is where he would have his odd experience. The author says of what happened next. There was no electricity, and we would be seeing the house in the dark. The singular light bulb in the garage was glowing blue, not a bright iridescent blue by any means, but a sickly dim blue that was just bright enough to illuminate the walls and floor and bathe the garage in the same shade of blue it was radiating. My parents and M both made a comment about how that was weird, and maybe there was some sort of charge going to the light through the power lines. I couldn't care less because what I was staring at was worse than any creepy light that was working when it shouldn't have been. There was something inside the garage. It looked like a human, or maybe what used to be human, but it appeared wet. Its skin kind of looked like if you grabbed it, it would just slip right off. I could see veins through the skin, which was pale. It seemed almost see-through. This thing was emaciated. I could see all its ribs. I could see hip bones. Its arms and legs consisted of just enough fat in the thighs and upper arms that you could tell that's what they were, and not just sticks slapping on a lump of flesh. Yikes. The neck was just long enough to appear proportionately weird, and the head was turned to look straight at me. If you could even say it was looking, because where normal eyes would be, there were just holes. There were stringy clumps of hair hanging from the tops and sides of its head, and I got the sixth sense that it was happy to see me, almost as if it was thinking, finally. I could tell if it stood up, it would be tall, almost ceiling height, so about 8 feet. Very scary. I watched this thing crawl on all fours, think hands and very long feet, not hands and knees. Yikes. From the center of the garage, directly under the light bulb. It crossed in front of me and my family and M and disappeared into the wall. It kept its head turned on me the whole time, and I followed it with my eyes the whole time. I don't remember even feeling scared in the traditional sense. I felt invited. I felt intrigued, and more than anything, I felt like it had been waiting on me. Just me. I felt like it was telling me, come in and make yourself at home. You're welcome here. My parents decided they were thoroughly creeped out, though, and without seeing the rest of the house, we left. They told M that they weren't interested, and that was that. We fired her shortly after because she made a habit of showing us abandoned houses in the pitch dark. I was the only person who saw the quote-unquote thing, but my parents, after thinking I was asleep in the car on the way home, started talking about how once they opened the garage door, they felt they were trespassing, like someone was watching them. Also, that it felt colder all of a sudden, that the rest of the house smelled like rotted meat, and something just wasn't right about that blue light.
Now, that's horrifying as well. I don't like any bit of any of this.
Yeah.
But
are you gonna say what I'm also thinking is that it sounds like every part of a disgusting sexual encounter?
No, I mean, maybe. Here's what I'm thinking. That because they all sound so like familiar of what I know as like the Wendigo of Native American horror.
Sure.
Up north. Are they overbreeding and thus having to push to new territory? And now we're getting them down in Florida or Louisiana country, and they're going to interbreed with the Grunches, and now we're going to have another new cryptid.
The Wendigo is definitely a tall, pale, skinny creature, supposedly, but sometimes it's just a spirit that makes you cannibalistic. And these don't seem to have a lot of go eat flesh vibes about them. It has a lot of just eerie, leering, watching vibes. I don't know. That last one is terrifying, and that sounds more like a spirit than a creature, unless, like Nate said, maybe there is a portal, in that wall. Who knows? To the Grunch zone. Man,
I believe that more than ever. I'm
a
playing
portal,
that.
A glory hole, if you will.
Okay, so we're gonna move right along. I'm gonna try to whip through these next few. The this next one takes place while these people are on summer vacation. Doesn't say where, just says a heavily wooded area.
They're up in New York, upstate, probably by Rochester. I know that.
Oh no, this says the streets of Detroit, Michigan, where we have a report of multiple humanoids terrorizing a couple of witnesses. At the time,
the Nain Rouge.
Yeah. At the time, the witness was at a friend's house, and they were with a large group of people having a bonfire party at the end of summer vacation, just before he was to graduate from high school. People generally graduate from high school at the start of summer vacation, but whatever. The house was in a residential area with a yard that backed up against the wooded area, but it wasn't a particularly rural area with houses visible on either side through the trees. According to the witness, they got the bonfire started with no alcohol involved, and at 10 p.m., people began going home until it was just him and 4 friends. They sat around chatting for an hour before the other friends left, leaving just 2 of them. As they sat there chatting quietly, their attention was drawn to some odd noises coming from out past the light of the fire. Witness would say of the event. As my friend sat facing back towards the woods, and I with my back to the woods on the other side, As my friend sat facing back towards the woods, and I with my back to the woods, weird way to say that, whatever, we started hearing some noises. Sticks cracking on the ground, leaves being brushed through, those sorts of things. He laughed it off, saying it was just the neighbor's cat. As we sat and continued to shoot the shit, the noises continued, and I continued to brush them off under the assumption that it was just a cat. However, I was a little unnerved when we both heard what sounded like footsteps in the front yard. At first, we thought our friend had gotten back, but realized it wasn't him after a few minutes had gone by. Eventually, our friend came back from dropping his girlfriend off at home. Sorry, guys.
That's all right. It's the pale crawler sucking your energy out.
No, at
Bless
home.
you.
And we started talking again like nothing had ever happened. A couple minutes later, however, the noises from the woods started up again, but this time they were closer, much closer. I could see my friend was clearly unnerved by this, and I reminded him. He told me it was just a cat. He looked at me and told me that they didn't have a cat. Fucker. He just said that to reassure himself that it was nothing.
Which, now, to be fair, it still could be a cat. Cats get into places.
Sure.
It doesn't have to be your cat in a house. It could be someone's cat.
Spoiler alert.
Maybe
not
the
a
neighbor
cat.
keeps a crawler.
Oh,
It's yeah. I'm gonna go ahead and tell you it's not a cat. It's a crawler. I quickly got up and moved to the other side of the house with the fire and sat down to the other side of the fire and sat down between my 2 friends so that we were all facing the woods. After using a few choice words towards my friend to express how I felt about him letting me sit with my back towards whatever was there, things took a bit of a turn. We saw something move in the brush. It was slight but noticeable. It looked fairly big too, about 5 feet tall, kind of human-like. We tried to joke it off and convince ourselves it was nothing. This worked until a few moments later when we started to see more movement. This continued for a couple minutes until it got significantly closer, and we decided to go inside. We hurried as we started to grab everything we needed to take in and put the lid on the fire pit. Throughout this time, it continued to move closer to us. It almost seemed hesitant yet curious as we saw it dart about. Nonetheless, we rushed inside. We locked the door behind us and went to the windows. By this point, it knew we were inside and was coming up to the house. It would dart by the windows as we ran between the windows in search in the house in hopes we could catch a glimpse of what had us so scared. We made out some basic details. It was about 4 to 5 feet tall when it was hunched over, humanoid and pale. Almost white, but still a little gray, kind of pale. This lasted for a good 10 minutes until we heard scratching of nails on the wooden deck connected to the house.
no.
Around this time, it seemed to shift its focus toward the fire, as we apparently didn't put the lid back on completely. Before I knew it, my friend was calling us over to the window that faced the fire. The lid was off, and we could see the shape of it darting around the fire. We later found the lid about 10 feet away from the pit. Something had to have picked it up by the hot metal handle and thrown it over there. Around this time, we also noticed that it was around some of the windows. It was then that we realized there wasn't just one of whatever it was. There were multiple. If I had to guess, I'd say there was about 4 or 5.
That's pretty insane.
Pretty scary.
So they're pack animals. I'm gonna throw it out there now.
Pack hunting and
Or just
generally
pack hanging
impervious
out.
to fire.
The friend whose window had been looked into would later confirm that one of the entities had been peering through the window of the house as the kid drove away later that day. This is another quote from the story. My friend continued to update us on the events still unfolding at his house. Besides seeing the figures outside his window still, he claimed he saw a face in the window at one point, pale skin and black eyes. He described them almost like being holes in the face. They were so dark. He also claimed at one point something had scratched the screen on his window.
Wow.
It was all amazing.
Very, very creepy.
It was all amazing
Yes.
enough that they had decided to try to see if the entities the following evening, setting up a fire just as they had done the night before in hopes of this perhaps getting some photographic evidence of what they had seen. They would not come away disappointed. The next night, we were right back at it. We knew what we saw and we needed validation. This time, we had another person stay with us so they could back up our claims. We needed evidence that was better than just our word. It was too dark to take pictures or videos.
If they had to get another late graduate.
We set the night up just like the previous. We were eating hot dogs and we were listening to Lil Nas X. So jam the Lil Nas X, get the hot dogs going. Okay. We set the night up just like previous night. Everyone got to the house with a nice fire going, and we waited for things to start up. Once it got dark out, we started hearing the rustling in the brush again. An hour or so later, the noises got closer, and I switched sides so that all four of us were facing the wooded area. Within minutes, we saw whatever was out there moving through the brush again. There were probably about 2 or 3 at this point. We tried to hold out for a while, thinking we were hot shit and it wouldn't come for us. This attitude changed within a matter of minutes as the pale figures got closer and started to go to the sides of us. They were surrounding us. We got up and calmly tried to put the lid back on the fire. We figured it would if we showed we were getting afraid, they might go for us. As soon as we finished getting the lid on the fire and grabbed everything we needed, we rushed inside. Before we knew it, they were darting past the windows again. At this point, the fourth person, who hadn't been with us during it all the night before, agreed that something was out there.
Man,
As
what
time
a bummer
passed-
to get invited to that party as the bait.
Oh, God, I want to go to that party. As time passed, we gathered up the courage to go back out and stand on the deck and try to get some kind of evidence. We stood out there as they got closer. There were more this time, maybe 5 or 6. We stood there in silence as we observed them. They almost seemed curious with a hint of mischief. Some watched us, some ran around. One even scratched the underside of the deck directly beneath my feet.
Fuck that.
I could feel it as its
I
nail
hate
dragged
that.
across the wood. At one point, a deer ran out of the wooded area just a bit further down the road. It was like it was running away from something, but definitely not us because it ran somewhat towards us, not away from us. After all this, we hurried back into the house. The 3 of us left, and again, we saw whatever they were in the yard as we bolted to our cars. Almost a year has passed since those nights, and the thought of it all still terrifies me to this day. What's more, as I was driving the other night, I decided to pass the neighborhood to sort of reminisce about old times. As I was driving through, I saw those same pale figures hunched over and moving about. There were about 4 or 5 of them.
Jesus Christ.
I'm speechless here. This is horrifying, and I don't want to go outside now.
I mean, honestly, like my instinct is like, you're hallucinating and you need to probably talk to someone. But then there's like 4 people who came around and saw this allegedly.
Yes.
If it is hysteria, it's mass hysteria.
If you got something like this going on, invite me to the party. I'll be the bait. I'll do something stupid. Finally, we have a report from a residential in Sacramento, California. Suburban neighborhood to the right, fields and trees to the left. Kicking it in her car, not quite ready to go home from work, apparently. At some point, movement caught her attention. She explains what transpired. As I was sitting there, I saw a figure come out of the neighborhood a little less than a quarter mile ahead of where I was parked. Approximately where the neighborhood park, Roseview Park, is. It was hard to see from the distance, but it appeared tall, 7 to 8 feet, super skinny and bony, hunched over with long arms. It sprinted across the road at a speed faster than I've ever seen a human go. I couldn't guess the speed, but it was fast enough to concern me.
That I know that exact emotion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for its speed, I probably would have just assumed it was a human and ignored it. But anyways, it disappeared into the fields. Something calm came over me. I don't know what it was, but something was keeping me from panicking. I remember just feeling like, okay, it's time to leave now, and calmly driving home. It wasn't until a few months later that I realized I'd seen that and that it wasn't normal. This would apparently not be the last time she would see something like this in the vicinity, as on 2 other occasions, she would have similar bizarre experiences. She explains of these. Flash forward to a week ago. A friend and I were at the same park hanging out, and as it got later into the night, we both started to feel more and more unwelcome there. We heard an inhuman guttural scream that sounded like it came from the area I saw the creature cross at. That's not particularly incriminating, but as soon as I heard the scream, its apparent location made me think of the creature. I didn't tell this to my friend as she is easily spooked. I just tried to stay calm, didn't want to let my fear get out of control. We finally started the trek back to the car. As we left, we faced a dark area with lots of bushes and trees across from the sidewalk we were taking to get to the car. As soon as I faced that dark spot, I had the feeling of looking at a face. I didn't literally see a face, but it was the feeling of seeing a face. And it didn't feel like a human face. It felt like something that understood that what I was, but didn't understand why I was there. And wasn't quite hostile, but had the attitude of like, get out of my home. Once again, I didn't tell my friend that I saw that, not until we got in the car. Ever since then, I have not been able to shake the feeling that that face belonged to the same creature I saw 2 years ago. Also, similar story, but not the same. Last night, I was driving in a wooded area near Sacramento, Loomis, and I saw a tall, burly figure in the woods with a white face. Not white as in Caucasian, white as in stark white. I thought it was wearing a green shirt, but I only saw it for a split second. It gave me such a bad, uneasy feeling. I told the guy I was with what I saw, and he didn't tell me until later, but he said he's heard rumors of people seeing quote unquote white walkers in these woods. That's from Game of Thrones that are described as
the only reference he knows
and having white faces and black hair. I've never heard of that. I don't know if he meant skinwalkers or what, but that's what he said. I also felt like something was watching me in those woods later.
Weird.
So there you have it, folks. That is all of the Pale Crawler information from Mysterious Universe synthesized through your very own Werewolf Radar. And watch your ass, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, that last one kind of sounds like they're like green Bigfoot, but they're all pale. They just are like dressed in like ghillie suit type gear.
First thing that jumped to my mind was
hilarious.
the Flannel Man.
Oh yeah,
it could be a flannel man.
Flannel Man. Flannel Man. That's it, y'all.
Yeah. Well, I've got some more weird shit for you.
Take us
first
there.
of all,
My segment was called "I Ran Crawl the Way Home." By the way.
First thing I want to do is we're going to go back to llewellyn.com to ask what's in your cauldron.
Nice.
I love it.
Today's spell is a penny for prosperity.
Oh.
Bury a penny either in the ground or in a potted plant if that's all you have available. Like if you live in some sort of brutalist horror show. If possible, find a penny minted in the year you were born. Say these words as you bury it. I know that it's worth far more than a cent. I offer the earth this coin with intent. Visualize the prosperity you need to reach your goals and be successful.
Okay.
So just, bury a penny and then be successful.
Sure.
It's that easy. Paranormal
Easy
tip for
peasy.
success.
I mean, that's what we've been saying. It's definitely a damn sight easier than fucking necro pants.
Boy, But if you have necro pants, in for a penny, in for a pound of medieval's flesh.
Yeah, it's hard to beat the potency of the necro pants. Hard to get. You have to cut off a man's pants legs.